In 1999, everything changed. Napster launched, so did the iMac, and DVDs became widespread. The internet was commonplace and getting faster with DSL. Use of handheld devices like Palm Pilot and mobile phones were widespread, and teenagers everywhere, myself included, wanted the Nokia 3210 desperately. Y2K panic was in full swing, and a little-known search engine called Google was quietly filing its first patent. But mostly, it was the year a little sci-fi action movie from two relatively unknown filmmakers exploded into the pop culture consciousness, forever altering how we thought about reality, identity, and the internet. And that film was The Matrix.
You already know my name. And you can see that I'm a machine.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid.
Welcome to the Final Girls podcast. I'm Anna Bukutska, your podcast host. I'm a critic, then the author of the book Feeding the Monster, and in this series of the show, I'm journeying in bullet time through the intersections of horror and technology, from the very first robots of the silent era to our most recent AI villains. On this season of the podcast, we're deep diving into machines. Every episode, I'm joined by a guest to discuss a film or two and how it captures our fears and anxieties around technology and the place it holds in our lives. This week, we're plugging into The Matrix, the Wachowski sisters' era-defining sci-fi nightmare that fused cyberpunk cool with Hong Kong action, machine dread with simulation theory, all cozily wrapped up in techno-mysticism. It's a film that asks a question that would come to define the 21st century and many a late-night pub conversation. What if everything you thought was real isn't? Joining me to unpick how The Matrix remixed their cinematic past and plugged it into a distinctly postmodern paranoia is podcaster and writer Becky Darke, frequent guest of Evolution of Horror and dear friend of the pod. The film tapped into a growing fear that perhaps is even more prevalent today. What if the systems running the world might not just be broken, but might be watching us and controlling us? In this conversation, we only briefly talk about the sequels, The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions and Resurrections, and most of our conversation is centered on the first film. But if you haven't seen it recently or ever, consider this your spoiler warning. Remember to subscribe and review the podcast if you enjoyed this episode or indeed this series, and you can see what other films are coming up that I'll be discussing over on our Letterboxd page. Let me know if you take the blue or red pill by dropping me a line at hello@thefinalghost.co.uk, and if you wish to support the podcast, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/thefinalgirls. And with all that said, please enjoy our conversation about The Matrix. It has been a minute, Rebecca. How the hell are you?
I'm back. It's so nice. I feel like I'm home. Hello.
Hello. Hello through the interwebs, through the cyberspace, through the Matrix.
Exactly. I'm watching you right now on little green confetti coming down my screen, and it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Babe, things are good. Things are great. We were just talking before we started recording. We're doing this like mid-June, so it's hot.
It's too hot. The little green confetti is sweating. The screens are sweating. Yeah. It's not a happy place in the Matrix right now.
My screen has like condensation on it right now. My weird like porridge slop is kind of starting to, develop a bit of a film over the top of it in the heat.
You've just described my my human carcass right now. It's just porridge slop with some tattoos on it.
Hot.
Oh, it's gonna get hotter as we talk about all the latex and the leather in this film. But
Honestly.
So, Becky, I know all about you and horror, but one of the icebreaker questions that I'm asking everyone in this series is, what is the first piece of technology that you remember owning?
Oh my God. So I think it's, God, this ages me. So it like places me in such a specific point in time. I think it was a clock radio. Remember clock radios?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember it being like a big deal, like getting a clock radio for, my birthday one year. And I was probably about, I don't know, 8 or 9. I mean, I guess I had other technology before that, but that was the one that it felt like it was like mine. This little machine is mine and I can use it however I want. And really those two choices were telling the time or listening to the radio. But it was like, it was in my hands to choose my radio station. And it sort of sat very proudly next to my bed, this little, I don't know, Sony or Panasonic or God knows what little sort of chunk of plastic and neon with very clunky buttons on it. No tape player or anything fancy like that. It was literally just a radio with a clock on the front of it. And I thought it was the greatest thing that had ever happened to me.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that everything that you're describing is about having the power to control something.
Yeah.
It's like, I can pick my own goddamn radio station.
Yeah.
One of the main thrusts of the series, as you know, is kind of exploring this intersection of horror and tech, machines and AI and all the digital slop. What do you think? What's for you the most interesting part about the intersection of horror and technology?
I mean, I know this is probably going to sound very obvious, but I am both in awe and terrified by machines. I always say thank you to the ATM when it gives me my money.
Stop it, do you really?
Of course I do.
That is so sweet. That might be the sweetest thing I've ever heard.
What happens when they take over? You have to be polite to them now.
You're playing the long game.
Exactly. And like when I used to drive before I lived in London, and when you go and go into a multi-story car park and you press the button for your ticket. Again, this is you probably don't do it like this anymore, but you did back in the days that I used to drive. You used to press a little button as you drove into the car park and it would give you a little ticket. And I'd say, thank you very much. And then I'd wind up my window and I'd drive in. It's just, it's common politeness. And I think that I am, as you say, playing the long game, and just play my cards right. Make sure that when they do inevitably rise and take over and, get control of the big red button, that they're like, I just want a bit of a warning, like get to the bunker. We're about to do it, But yeah, I mean, I think for me, machines in horror are kind of twofold. So you've got what I'm kind of alluding to, right? Which is this idea of, I guess, AI. And, this is going back to films like Terminator and stuff. I know that everybody is talking about AI at the moment because it is sort of starting to really take root, I guess, in kind of...
it's every day now.
It's every day. It's every day, right? The world was talking about AI many, many years ago when it was playing chess and, Judgment Day and all of that kind of thing. So there's that. There's kind of the fear of machines becoming sentient. I think that is a sort of real kind of trope within the sort of horror side of sci-fi and where those things intersect. And then I guess there is the kind of body horror side of machinery. So it would be something like Videodrome or Akira or Tetsuo, these sorts of hybrid mechanized and sort of human, and which one is going to win out. And I find that really scary, and that kind of intrusion of like wires and cables and sort of fluids and stuff on the human body. And like I am essentially a walking cyborg. I've got type 1 diabetes. I've got little machines on me all the time. I've got a little machine I wear in the back of my arm. I've got a little machine that I wear around my waist and that is plugged into a cannula on me to keep me alive. So I'm halfway there. So really thanking the ATM it's just good practice on my part.
Oh my God, that is... mean, I knew this about you, but also it's an interesting way to think about it. It's like you were a little bit closer to the machines.
Yeah, exactly.
Of
But it is an interesting thing. Like I'm not going to dwell on it, but a little machine keeps me alive every single day. Like it is just, it's on me all the time. And if I didn't have it on me, there are other ways that you can take insulin. Of course there are. And I used to, but in terms of how I manage my condition now, it is these little machines that literally sort of live /on/in me, and they speak to each other via Bluetooth, and they keep me alive and keep me functioning. And so I do feel quite close to machinery. I feel scared by some aspects of machinery, but in other ways I feel extremely grateful to it and very fond of it. My little pump's called Leonard.
Stop it! Have you named the other one? The other
no,
one?
it's just kind of like it's like Leonard and Leonard 2.
Oh,
but Leonard's the main boy, and I named it. You know the X-Files episode?
Yes, I do.
Humbug. Yeah, I named him after the little vestigial twin in the Humbug episode.
I've been rewatching the X-Files, and I've only a few weeks ago rewatched Humbug. Listen, it's a whole mood. It's great. Thank you, Leonard, for your service.
Yeah.
So, moving into machines who are keeping humans alive. Tell me about your relationship with The Matrix. When was the first time you saw this film? Did it change you? And how has your view of it changed over the years?
So I saw it at the cinema in 1999. I would have been 17. I remember vividly walking up the street to school, talking to my boyfriend at the time, and he'd already seen it and I hadn't seen it yet. Rude. We're not together anymore. And the whole question, like kind of around the marketing and all of the like word of mouth stuff, it was almost sort of whispered as this huge mystery was, what is the Matrix? And so it felt like this sort of, this question that needed to be answered by going to see the movie, which is very clever marketing. And it felt the way sort of people that had seen the film would talk about it would be like, oh my God, it's this sort of huge unsolvable puzzle. And then you go and watch the film and it's like, oh, well, that's what the Matrix is. They've literally just explained it to us. So like once you've seen the film, you're fine. But I remember it sort of being like this really big deal, the film itself, and kind of going to see it and then being able to speak to other people kind of in, at lunch, on your lunch breaks and stuff at college about the film and sort of what we loved about it. And I remember thinking it was unbelievably cool. Like I'd kind of always been into anime anyway. Like I'm into that, like comic books and anime and stuff was already very much a part of my I guess kind of like visual language in terms of sort of cinema and a lot of the pop culture that I was into. And so seeing that transferred so beautifully into live action, and just watching the fight sequences and the incredible action and the choreography and the effects blew my mind. Keanu Reeves, melt me into the floor. Just he is so good looking in this film.
So everyone is so beautiful and so hot in this film.
Is so good looking.
Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. I remember thinking that the soundtrack was incredible and owning that on CD and listening to that a lot. And yeah, you asked if it changed me. Like it definitely changed me. I would say that The Matrix is in my top 10, if not my top 5 films of all time. I absolutely love it. And I've watched it and watched it and watched it. And I watched it again for this chat and was I was watching it. So I've got it on 4K, but like a disc. But because I'm ridiculous, I decided to just look it up online and watched it on my laptop in bed instead, rather than watching it in all of its glory in 4K, which I paid money for on my TV. And I was in bed, and it was one of the scenes quite close to the beginning, and my husband Dave came in, and he knows the film really well as well, and immediately started quoting it. Just like, so he hadn't even been watching it from the beginning. He just came in like mid-scene and just like rattled off the next line, which I thought was incredible. I was like, this is why I married you. And I was just quoting along, like air punching, laughing out loud with glee, just had the best fucking time. And I couldn't tell you what number this is of my watches of this film, but I just love it so much, as much now, if not more than I did in 99.
Great. Perfect setup. This is going to be a love fest. I was thinking, listening to you, I might be wrong because my memory is a bit hazy, which is why I collect my cinema stubs. But I was around 10 or 11 in 1999. So I think I might have gone and seen this in the cinema in some way, shape or form. But I don't have a clear memory of it. What I do have a clear memory of is seeing it on a DVD, a rented DVD on my little TV. And it sort of has this quality of, the little TV that Morpheus has in The Matrix when he's educating or, explaining things to Neo. That's what it sort of looked like, and that's what it felt like. And I've have this feeling about a couple of quite important films in my movie education where they feel like found objects, like almost relics that don't really belong in the cinema, that I've never experienced with a crowd, that I've never experienced in an auditorium. And again, I might be misremembering seeing this at the time because I just went to the cinema by myself a lot when I was a kid because I'm an only child, and there was a multiplex across the street from where I grew up. So it was a safe place for me to just go and hang out for 4 hours every day. Looking back on it, I don't think I fully understood the impact that The Matrix had because I didn't have anyone to discuss it with. And there was this element where it was like, it was so cool and it was so actiony and it was so American and big, which is ironic considering how much it ripped off like Hong Kong action films.
Yeah.
But I think it implanted in me a lifelong ambition to own a floor-length black duster.
Yes.
I needed a long black coat, and I have been searching for it for my entire teenage and adult life. I finally found it a couple of years ago. And let me tell you, I rewatched The Matrix. And I was like, this is what I've been looking for. This is me self-actualizing, is I just needed a long black coat so I can swish it around while I walk down a street and feel like Neo.
Yes.
And I really want to put some sunglasses on as well, but I'm not that much of a twat.
Little pince nez or whatever they're called.
Yeah. And having revisited it many times, now it feels like it's almost too iconic for its own good. It's been ripped off, it's been homaged, it's been influential. I would argue that it is one of the most influential films, one of the most influential American films, definitely one of the most influential sci-fi and action films produced ever. Right there alongside Star Wars.
Yeah.
What stands out to you the most from the film? Is it the action scenes? Is it the philosophy and how it's and its legacy? Is it the latex and the leather? Is it Keanu?
Yes to all the above. Can you have an all the above to the most? I mean, I think in terms of its legacy, it's got to be the action. So you've got, all of that incredible wire work that it kind of took from Hong Kong cinema, and the martial art movies, but it kind of melded it together with other kind of special effects techniques like bullet time. Like it kind of really, I mean, I know that bullet time was being used in like Gap adverts and stuff like before The Matrix, but it was really The Matrix that took it and kind of did something quite so iconic that has been so influential kind of for a lot of action special effects since. And I mean, even if we're just talking about the movie stars themselves, like Keanu Reeves famously does so much of his own martial arts, stunts, gun work. And that really kind of started for him in The Matrix. And so there are sort of huge franchises now. Like at the moment in cinemas is the film Ballerina, which is a spin-off of John Wick. And John Wick, I don't think would have existed if it wasn't for Keanu Reeves starting his kind of action stunt journey as he did, doing all of the martial arts and sort of wire work and stuff that he was in The Matrix. So I think that for me, if I have to like put my finger on one standout legacy from the film, it's got to be that kind of action sort of influence that it's had on cinema since. But yeah, I mean, all of the things that you listed, the fashion, the even things like, I mean, God, like the Nokia 8110 at the time.
Yes.
Like, I can't remember another film that had a tie-in like cell phone, you know, like it was so huge. And I think it's really interesting what you say about like not realizing kind of quite the level of influence until you like really sit down and think about it and start to sort of put all the red threads together. But I mean, this is an enormous movie for a reason.
I want to spend a little time talking about the action because this was the thing that really sort of glued me to my seat. I rewatched it a couple of years ago. I remember doing an episode on it for the Bigger Picture podcast, which is a podcast I used to do for the BFI. And rewatching it now on not a 4K, but just a regular old Blu-ray, and on my just home TV, I was so struck by how good, how effective, how intense the action scenes were. You felt every punch. It was just before, you know, we might cover the sequels slightly, but I rewatched the sequels as well, and that had dissipated in the sequels, really. The set pieces were bigger, but I didn't feel the punches as much as I did in the original 1999 film. Like, every single punch had a knock-on effect. It had a bruise. It had a cut on one of the characters' faces. They all moved really differently. And it was interesting to read how all of the actors really, like the choreographer, the kind of fight choreographer that was employed to choreograph all the stunts and the fight sequences were kind of a bit worried because they thought that they weren't good enough or were not fit enough to deliver all these stunts, and then sort of adapted the sequences to their unique movements and ways of kind of moving and ways of delivering action. So it really feels like the actors are not being forced into performing a particular kind of action style, but rather the action fits into their style themselves.
I love that
and their
so much,
bodies.
which is one of the reasons it will feel as unique as it does.
Yeah. And like also just Trinity and Neo and like Morpheus and even the agents like Hugo Weaving have such distinct ways of fighting that actually you get the characterization through the way that they move and through the way that they fight each other.
100%.
And honestly, like we would not, I think, have, obviously not John Wick, but I don't think we would even have like Wanted or any of those kind of 2000 style slow motion fight sequences. We wouldn't have like so many films, no Kick-Ass. I would even argue that like all of the Marvel movies, all the superhero movies, including Marvel and DC, have taken an enormous amount of influence from the style of action, bullet time, slow motion, and even just the set pieces from The Matrix.
Yeah.
It's truly, particularly in the first film, like some of the best scenes are also the fight scenes. And the thing that I had forgotten, Becky, was the fact that it starts off with one. It is just like, boom, you're in it.
Yeah.
And shit's kicking off. There's no time. It's just like, boom, immediately glued to it. Someone's like being thrown through a window, someone's bleeding, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, title credits.
Honestly, like the fact that, you know, we haven't discussed it yet, but this is made by the Wachowski sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the film starts with an action set piece involving Carrie-Anne Moss, aka Trinity, is so fucking cool. Like, to start your brand new property, you know, huge sort of big budget sci-fi action film with in like 99 with a woman doing the big fight scene is, I think, really brave, actually. And it is so fucking cool. She is so amazing. Like, that whole kind, even the script, even the like lines around it when the cop says, you know, I think we can handle one little girl. I've sent two men in, they're bringing her down. And he says, no, Lieutenant, your men are already dead. And I'm just like, sploosh, you know, like, oh my God, she's so amazing. And like the way that she moves, those incredible camera setups that they're using so that when she jumps up into the air in that kind of crane kick and the 360 where the camera zooms around her. I mean, immediately this film is putting its cards on the table and letting you know what you're in for. And it just doesn't let up at any point. Like, that could have been in any lesser film, that shot or that sequence could have been like the sequence, the one that everything else was kind of, you know, that sort of anchored everything else around it. Mm-hmm. But it's not. It's the opening sequence and everything else is as good or better as the film goes on.
It's just a starter, baby. And oh my God, I remember thinking as well about the way Carrie-Anne Moss plays Trinity here. There is such a huge amount of strength and precision in her movements. Like, she moves like something out of a video game. And obviously that makes sense as we understand the world a bit more and we understand that this is a simulation and they've all acquired these skills as one would, you know, acquire skills suddenly and effortlessly almost through a video game. It's like the way that she moves kind of does feel like it's sort of this elevated plane of reality, and it's so strict and strong and the movements are so straight and graceful. Whereas by comparison, in the first scenes with Neo, before he's like fully Neo and he's still sort of Thomas Anderson, where he's clumsy and unsure and tentative because the world in the Matrix still seems to him like the real world. He doesn't understand that there's like the rules are more flexible and bendable than he has ever believed the world to be.
Yeah, absolutely. That, and like, again, you know, in terms of sort of Keanu Reeves's physicality, the transformation of the character from Thomas Anderson, where he is looking to escape the building and he's having to make that decision about whether to climb down and sort of goes out on the ledge and decides, no, absolutely not, and goes back in and therefore gets captured by the agents. And then as he does his training, becomes more sure of the way he moves and then the way that he kind of comes into his own powers as he starts to manipulate the Matrix around him and sort of becomes, you know, Neo, and then sort of the ultimate version of that as he realizes that he is the one in that sort of big huge final fight against Agent Smith. Like his physicality, the way that he portrays that character arc through the way that he moves throughout the film, I think is amazing.
And do you think, we've referenced sort of lightly the influence that it has had, but do you think The Matrix has become a blueprint for action films?
Interesting. So I don't watch a huge amount of like modern action. I used to watch so much and I don't know, it's kind of lost me a little bit over the years. I think maybe it started to feel a bit samey, and I wonder if that is because they were all trying to be the Matrix. So like, I don't know, like what are the big action films? Like, I guess
I
stuff
was-
like Mission Impossible, but
Yeah.
I don't watch the Mission Impossible films. And
Oh my God,
I know
you
that obviously
haven't?
those are much more kind of like grounded, I guess.
Oh, not at all, girl. No, like
No?
what?
No.
Like I think 5 onwards, they are very ungrounded, both
Oh, okay,
literally and figuratively. Not to detour too much, but yeah, a lot of it becomes just, you know, what is the biggest, least grounded stunt that Tom Cruise can pull off.
can do.
Usually, it involves a lot of heights, like what's the tallest
what
building?
can he throw himself off this time?
Is it a cliff? Is it a plane? Let's find out. No, I love the Mission Impossible films, but I do think there's something interesting about like action movies kind of taking something that works really well because of the character, because of the setting, because of the coolness, because of the like cyberpunkness of it all, right?
Oh.
And then just being like, oh, let's put that, but you know, in an office block. And let's try to do that, but like, you know, with Angelina Jolie and James McAvoy. Let's try to do that with like Liam Neeson. Let's try to do that with Gerald Butler, and just kind of like do the same tricks over and over again. I think, I don't know, someone might come at me in the comments for this, but between The Matrix and Taken, there is like this mashup of, and then later on John Wick. Like those are the core 3 that I feel like have just been remade over and over and over again, have spawned their own little subgenre of action set pieces and plot lines.
Yeah, absolutely. I do wonder, just coming back quickly to, you know, Trinity being such an incredible central character in The Matrix. I think that her as a character, and again, coming back to, you know, the way that she moves and the way that, like, how strong and sort of strong, but also like strong physically, but also, you know, she's got like there's so much kind of emotion and humanity behind her. I love that moment when, again, right at the beginning, when she gets to the bottom of the stairs and she thinks the agent's right behind her, and she sort of talks to herself and she's like, get up, Trinity, get up. And she's like talking to herself. You know, all of that stuff, it shows like how human she is. And again, I think that's a really important thing within the Matrix itself, because that's the whole point, right? It's about the fact that once you're kind of taken out of the Matrix, you're suddenly the most human you've kind of ever been. And so I think it's important that all of the characters really have those human characteristics so front and center, for better or worse. But she has really sort of paved the way, I guess, for films like Atomic Blonde, for example. You know, Charlize Theron in that is so incredible. Again, coming back to Ballerina now, and so much more kind of like female fronted action, which can only be a good thing.
And you know, you talk a little bit about the human element of it. So let's talk about the humans versus the machines, which really is one of the through lines of the Matrix. What are the machines like in the film? And do you think that the humans are any better in the Matrix?
So what have we got? We've got humans. This is all a bit Terminator. So we've got humans and they make machines. And then at some point, the machines start to rise up, and the humans don't know who kind of took the first punch, but this huge war breaks out. The humans scorch the sky because the machines are solar powered. And then the machines have to farm humans as batteries for our bioelectricity, and so we're all in pods, kind of linked up as batteries basically, and you get farmed, and we get that incredible shot of the little baby with all the plugs, and he's being fed liquefied other humans.
He's been put in his little pod so he can become a very good little battery.
Very good little battery. So, machines bad, okay? We're like, we agree.
Machines bad, humans not doing that much for the most part.
Humans maybe, or definitely, like, initially bad. And then we got fucked. And now we're the underdogs. And so you've always got to root for the underdog. And
now
so
we're the sexy
underdogs.
Rebels.
Now we're the resistance. Mm-hmm. Or if we're not the resistance, we are batteries, or if we're not, or I guess, and when we're batteries, there's this really interesting line when Morpheus is taking Neo through the red dress, the lady in the red dress training. And he's saying to him, you know, there are some people who are so happy with their lot in the Matrix. You know, the whole idea of kind of pulling people out of it is to show them the truth, that we are slaves, that we have no free will, that we're living in this dreamland. And there are some humans, and we see this through the character of Cypher, who ignorance is bliss, right? They will sort of fight to the death for their right to be in the dark and eat delicious steak.
Yeah,
and
they'd rather fake steak than actual slop.
Exactly. And so that's a really interesting kind of look at the human, the sort of human reaction, I guess, to what's going on in this film is there are these two very distinct camps. And then again, that, I guess, is sort of boiled down into like the red pill and the blue pill that Morpheus offers Neo, which is if you take the blue pill, you can go back to sleep, you can tell yourself whatever you wanted and just get on with your slightly sad, 9 to 5 and going to clubs at night and listening to Rob Zombie. Sounds good to me. Or you can take the red pill and your eyes will be open and I will show you how far, because he keeps sort of using these sort of Alice in Wonderland analogies, right? I'll show you how far the sort of tunnel goes down. And so, there's so much in this about kind of not necessarily whether the humans are good or bad, but which choice you're going to make when it's given to you, about whether you want your eyes opened and potentially live a less stake-filled life, or you're going to sort of stay within the more sort of dream world, I guess, where ignorance is bliss. And so I find that really, really interesting. And I know which one I'd choose. I'd choose the steak.
Oh my God, would you really?
Yeah.
Becky!
Yeah, I fucking would, mate.
Mate, that is the most revealing part of this episode so far.
I know. And I think that there are maybe, including you, some people who'd be disappointed hearing that from me, but I'm not built to live. I'm not built to live on a spaceship eating gruel. I am built to sit watching movies in bed, eating my steak.
Listen, to quote Parker Posey in The White Lotus, if you're not built to live uncomfortably, that's okay. I respect it. I have, as you know, I have a problem with authority. So of course I take the pill that will show me the knowledge. Of course I am built to endure suffering. And of course I'm built to like fight for a bigger mission. And of course I would do that.
Respect that so much. And I wish I was better, but I'm not.
I am not on board with those terrible looking ratty sweaters that they all wear. I think it needs a Queer Eye here.
It does.
I think it needs like revamping. We can do more with that. Matrix Reloaded definitely did that. They definitely understood the assignment, and it was like, oh, we don't have any threads? Great, everyone's hot anyway. Fabulous. And nobody's wearing anything. Let's make some bikinis for Zion. That's the kind of the campaign that I'm behind.
Yes, please. I think it was Matrix Reloaded that I realized that latex came in other colors than black, and I was like, oh, holy shit. Okay, Monica Bellucci, we're having this conversation, are we? I'm listening.
Oh my God. But it's really... Do you know what? I wanted to ask if you felt this way as well. But rewatching The Matrix, which is a film that was released in 1999, where people were very, very nervous about the year 2000 and had very big ideas about humanity and the earth ending, about the machines taking over, about everything collapsing, about Y2K, about the end of history, about maybe this is as good as it gets. Which is, And at the same time, dealing with a lot of disillusionment and kind of widespread discontent. There's a great article, the one that I shared with you in advance by Emily St. James over at Vox, where it kind of talked about this film as an end of history movie. And there's a few more like that in 1999, including stuff like Fight Club. I would argue also Eyes Wide Shut and a couple of other films. But rewatching it in 2025 when everything feels really bad, everything is at stake, and we all feel on the precipice of either a cliff or World War III or something worse. It's an interesting situation to rewatch this film in, because you do have this sense of unreality that the people who live in the Matrix have as well. And I was wondering if you kind of, thinking back to 1999 when you first watched it as a teenager, do you feel that Y2K paranoia infused in it? And do you, rewatching it now, do you kind of have that sense again of this film feels heavier now, 26 years later even, than when we did not know what was going to happen in the year 2000?
Yeah, because I think in 99, especially living in the UK, like I can, we can only ever talk from our kind of own experiences, but, yeah, Y2K was a thing that worried a lot of people. In my experience, I don't think it really worried like my family, for example, or the kids that I was at college with at that time. And so it wasn't something that necessarily felt like it trickled down. We were sort of quite happy that we didn't really understand what it was. It was something about a date ticking over and the computers not being able to keep up, and the people up on high who we trusted in those days, because, it was a couple of years after the big Labour landslide in 97, and politics wasn't quite the horrendous trash fire that it is now. The late 90s was, despite, a lot of bad shit that was going down, it was a relatively optimistic time. And so there was obviously a lot of kind of paranoia around technology, as there kind of always is, I think. Whenever sort of something new comes out, there's suspicion of it. Or if something like the Y2K bug is kind of looming over people, there's sort of whisperings about that. But certainly my experience wasn't that it was something that was sort of worrying people on the street. Today, and I don't know if this is because, I'm now in my 40s rather than in my teens, and maybe teens don't feel it as much as we do, although I'd be surprised if they didn't, considering social media is so much bigger now and they're so much more plugged into everything. But I feel like the suspicion of technology and the suspicion of stuff like surveillance and the sort of just general kind of nightmarish stuff that is going on at the moment. As you say, we all sort of feel like we're on the edge of a cliff. I found watching The Matrix for this chat, like, it's so prescient, and still feels so relevant, to the point that I think it might even be more relevant now than it was in 99. Like, I just don't feel like it's aged at all. And if anything, it just seems to be proving itself more and more kind of the further we get away from it.
I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things as well that makes it feel particularly relevant in 2025 is, we mentioned briefly the fact that AI is now the topic of conversation everywhere. A lot of businesses, a lot of people are using it. It's become every day. Yeah. While we're still figuring out how to regulate it, how to monetize it, how to prevent Skynet was the first thing that I was going to say.
Yeah.
But there's this thing about The Matrix that I definitely found quite eerie. And I'm conscious that, we mostly talk about horror, and occasionally I sneak in these films that don't have that much to do with horror, but is there a way to talk about machines and machine horror and tech horror without talking about The Matrix? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But there's this thing about like not trusting what you're seeing, not trusting what you're touching,
Right.
what's in front of you. And the whole AI thing is kind of fascinating because now, I mean, it's complicated in many different reasons, but just to drill on this one point, I'll give you an example. I love a TikTok, right? And I particularly love an animal-based TikTok. And my boyfriend showed me this TikTok, which was hilarious, of a kangaroo with a boarding pass recently. And it was this really hilarious scene of like a kangaroo not being allowed on a flight. And it's just the camera just zeroes in on the kangaroo and he's holding his little boarding pass. He's being so polite. He's got the right size luggage. And people are arguing kind of over him. And I remember thinking, that is adorable. I love this. Like, save, subscribe, all of this jazz. And then a couple days later, it was revealed that that's just an AI generated scene.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about the kangaroo. And occasionally these things will pop up. And for a minute, I'm like, oh, that's so fucked up. Or it's like, oh, that's so funny. And it's like, wait, is this real?
Yeah.
Did someone film this? Or is this a really well done AI generated piece of media? And watching The Matrix after having been kind of exposed to, particularly there's been a recent kind of launch of some AI software that is basically can produce films. Mm-hmm. And there's a real jump that we're seeing live right now of AI generated material being so indistinguishable from real footage that we don't know whether it's real or not anymore. It has to be disclosed for us to understand what we're seeing. Yeah. And watching The Matrix with that, not just in the back of my mind, but that kind of on my phone every day, with that now taking the place of real kangaroo memes. I was just looking, I was like, well, I mean, I did. I'll be real with you, Becky. I did go down a little bit of a simulation theory rabbit hole after rewatching it, because I was like, how do we know? How do we know?
How do we know?
How do we know?
How would we know? I think that's the thing, is how would we know? And, right, how often do you get deja vu?
Not that often, to be honest.
Because every time I and I don't get it that often, a couple of times a year maybe, every time I get deja vu, I'm like, there's a glitch in the Matrix. They've changed something.
Yeah.
And that has just become part of, certainly, my common parlance. You know, it's just the first thing that always flicks into my head. But every time it happens, I think, oh, there you go. The simulation's showing itself. And I only know because I've seen The Matrix, but that wasn't a documentary, Becky. That was a Hollywood movie. But how do I know that? Maybe it's all a big double bluff, you know. So yes, I love to go down a spiral of this stuff. Of course I do. But I mean, things like there is almost a kind of halfway house between the two things. We are in reality, or we're in a simulation, or we're in the reality that we seem to be in 2025, where, as you're describing, things are being simulated that we can't tell the difference. And that I find very unsettling. Things like deep fake absolutely terrify me. Like, luckily, I'm not the sort of person of like high enough profile that anybody's going to waste their time deep faking. But I get worried about it. I worry that, you know, maybe one day I'll kind of open my phone and they'll have spliced my head onto, you know, somebody kind of spouting horrific, like, I don't know, racist propaganda or something, like something that would feel so sort of anathema to me and would make people think about me differently as a person. And like, that stuff is possible and terrifying. So yeah, I think there is something really interesting about what you're saying, this kind of, what is reality? You know, Morpheus asks that in the film. He says, like, it depends what you mean by, is this real? Like, if we're talking about what is real, is it what you see and touch? If that's what we're talking about, then it's just, you know, your synapses making connections between things.
I knew we were going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm so sorry to take us down there. But I do think that kind of one of the things that makes it quite an eerie watch is that this is no longer a theory. It's no longer kind of simulation theory is, but you can sort of understand on a really basic level as we're being confronted with deepfakes and AI generated images. And we do struggle to kind of tell the difference between them sometimes because the tech has gotten that good and media literacy has gone that bad.
Yeah.
And we just want comfort, to your earlier point of like, I would take the steak as opposed to the porridge slop on a pirate ship flying through space, the earth, something. It becomes increasingly difficult sometimes to even make that choice because sometimes you don't even know what it is that you're seeing and whether it's real or not. And I think there's an interesting take in that Emily St. James piece about the kind of the many afterlives and the evolution of this movie and the franchise of it's sort of really shifted over the years. And it's not that old. It's only been 26 years since The Matrix came out. But the way that people have reacted to it is really revealing about how we take the base core ideas of this Hollywood movie and reinterpret it based on where we are as a culture and where we are technologically as well. And maybe it feels like a good moment as well to talk about some of the ways that kind of the influence and the legacy of the film has shifted, particularly with the red pill, in quotation marks, has become co-opted by right-wingers and incels in a really negative way. So the question underneath all of that spiel is, how do you notice the legacy of the Matrix has shifted over the years?
I think it has become more negative when it's been kind of adopted by, movements such as the manosphere to suggest that, men who live with their eyes closed in a world being kind of run and manipulated by women, and that they're sort of walking around in this dream state, and you need to take the red pill if you want your eyes opened, and then you sort of become one of these sort of incel bros or part of this kind of movement against women. I think it's especially coming back to the Wachowski sisters. It's like, this is so far from what the Matrix started out as. Like the Wachowskis and the sorts of messages, this isn't a particularly message heavy film, or at least it's not beating you over the head with it. It's a piece of entertainment, but at the same time, it's relatively left leaning. It seems to have anti-capitalist themes. It's got a lot of respect for the women in its world, and for something like, and it's talking about truth, and not in a way of tearing the kind of shroud off of the eyes of men who are being cucked. We're talking about sort of real truth against oppression, truth against the kind of totalitarianism, that kind of thing. And actually, for the red pill to have been adopted by a movement like the Manosphere, I think is hugely ironic and very sad. If only they were fucking smart enough to understand what the Matrix was actually trying to say, then, we'd all be in a much safer and happier world, I think.
And I think it's also the truth of the characters themselves, particularly with Neo. Sort of, he is our audience surrogate. It is in many ways a classic tale of the chosen one discovering his chosenness, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's, it also is an incredibly valuable and important piece of media that has been interpreted and read as a trans allegory for many years, even
Yes.
before both of the Wachowski sisters came out as trans. Again, I'm gonna link this in the show notes because I'm conscious of the fact that I am a cis woman, you are a cis woman,
Yeah.
and this is not our experience, but I think that is one of the enduring readings of The Matrix. And I know it holds a really special place for both trans film critics and audiences. And in her piece, Emily St. James calls it the eggiest film ever made. Literally, there is an egg-shaped concoction from which Neo in the real world emerges.
Mhm.
And for anyone who doesn't know what this is reference to, an egg is kind of the way that some online trans communities refer to trans people who haven't realized they're trans yet. It's a beautiful piece, but it is this incredible read of also discovering the truth about yourself.
Yeah.
And that the idea of a body in The Matrix, the film, is a suggestion. It's not a definite. It's not the final truth of who you are, and it is not the only way of being, and that reality can be defined by yourself. And you can define who you are based on who you are inside. And I think kind of that, to your earlier point, it completely contradicts the way that it has been co-opted by a profoundly toxic, misogynistic, and all-round terrible subculture on the internet. But what's fascinating to me is how this one piece of text, this one Hollywood studio-produced movie that had brand partnerships with cell phones and sunglasses and all this stuff, has just shifted form throughout the years and the decades, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also just before we move on from what you were saying so beautifully about sort of truth about the self, is the other thing that really strikes me about Neo's journey is that as he becomes aware of the truth and as he begins to realize who he really is, whether that is sort of within his own physical body or, because there's so much in this about kind of, the mind being so powerful over the physical. And obviously it's as he starts to realize that truth about himself that he comes into his powers, right? That is when we were talking earlier about, Keanu Reeves's kind of physical performance in that is when he starts to suddenly have confidence in the way he walks, the way that he stands up straight, and then literally kind of coming into all of these skills and powers that literally take him to the conclusion of being, the victor of this film. And that feels powerful to me as well.
And that evolves as well a lot more as the films continue in the sequels. And I mean, I don't want to dwell too much on them, but very briefly, where do you stand on The Matrix Reloaded, Revolutions, and Resurrection?
Matrix Reloaded, I think, is really good. Matrix what? Matrix Reloaded, I think, is really good. Matrix Revolutions, I've only seen once. Matrix Resurrection?
Yes.
Resurrection, I have never seen.
Oh.
I didn't bother with it.
Interesting.
I might at some point, but I haven't seen it as of recording. I think Reloaded's really good. That fucking set piece on the with like the trucks on the highway is literally one of the best things I've ever seen with my eyes.
Becky, I literally fully expected you to say the cave orgy, but you surprised me.
Okay. The rave is not great. I don't love the rave. I know! I feel like I'm dropping so many bombs on you today, Anna.
I don't know. First it was a steak that you would rather stay in the Matrix. Now it's like you don't like the rave orgy in the cave.
It's so cringe.
What are you talking about? They're dancing and they're having sex and everyone is happy for a brief moment before they're all going gonna go in to fight the machines and die?
I know, but I find it cringe, okay?
They're making music with their feet. Like, it's all very exciting. It's like the one acceptable use of stomp.
Okay, I mean, that is the quote of the episode, and maybe you have won me over with it. That's fine. But yeah, fine. Reloaded, solid. Revolutions, I've only seen it once. I didn't love it. And I still need to see Resurrection. Am I even saying that right? Is it Resurrection?
I think it's Resurrection. Maybe Resurrections.
Yes.
Listen, it's not the best. I saw it in the cinema. It's not the best. But my question about all of that is, I mean, The Matrix, the OG, is just such a perfectly fully formed film. I have a lot of time for the sequels and the way that they expand the world and the lore. They're also really flawed. I think it's really interesting how there was an over-reliance on the special effects to the point where Neo just, especially when he's flying and in some of the fight scenes, he just looks like a sim.
Yeah.
And I love the bit of madness on the internet where there's a theory going around somewhere that the bad CGI effects in The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions is the Matrix glitching. It's the Matrix buffering, so we can't really see. Yeah, great. Love it. Very good stuff.
Love that.
I wanted to hear your thoughts on, what do you think of the whole Neo becoming Christ, essentially, by the end of the third one?
Yeah. It loses me, Anna. Yeah. It does lose me. I think the first one has a really lovely balance in the way that it weaves things like religion kind of into the plot in quite a subtle way. And as I say, a balanced way. It doesn't at any point sort of feel like it's bashing you over the head with it. Whereas by the end of the third one, it feels like I've been very much bashed over the head with it. So yeah, I mean, it's one of the things, kind of sequels and trilogies and legacies and franchises and all that stuff that often, I suppose, the sort of further they move away from a core sort of OG text that you're so in love with, sometimes you can start to lose some of your connection to it. And that's definitely what happened to me with these three films. And I think that the sort of Christ plot was one of the reasons for that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. It's not my favorite, because even though the metaphor is very clear in the first one, there's still enough good stuff there and enough room for alternative readings and experiences of the film.
Exactly.
But by the end of the third one, you really are in the, oh no, Neo's Jesus.
Exactly. It's just like, this is what it is. There's kind of no more room for interpretation.
And listen, I would be into a machine-led interpretation of the Bible. Just putting it out there. Maybe it exists. Maybe it doesn't. But I'd be quite into it. Is The Matrix the one for me? I think it got a bit too... simultaneously both too complicated and then too kind of oversimplified. Yeah.
I like a movie that, as we've sort of suggested, like the first one, you can kind of take from it what you want to, rather than it does. It feels sort of both complicated and a bit dumb at the same time.
We've spoken quite a bit about Trinity, quite a bit about Neo, but I wanted to talk about a character that we haven't really discussed and who's as connected and identifiable with the Matrix as Neo and Trinity and Morpheus are. Can we discuss Agent Smith?
Sure.
Thoughts on Agent Smith?
He creeps me out and scares me a lot. I think he's that fucking scene where he's got Morpheus in the room and he's like torturing him, and he goes and he like takes his earpiece out and he goes over and he's like running his hands all over Morpheus' head and sort of like sticking them up his nose and stuff. I am like, get off him, leave him. Like, it's It is so intrusive and hideous, and he just really scares me. Like, there is something deeply, deeply sinister about Agent Smith, and I think Hugo Weaving's performance is so good. Again, I think in the second and third films, he gets a bit more cartoonish, whereas in this original one, I just find him sinister and really scary. And they play with it so well in the way that they talk about the agents in general. So about how, nobody who has been sort of unplugged has ever come up against one of the agents and lived. Like, they've all died. And so there are points at the film, and it's a choice, I think, that the agents actually do feel a bit like OP, a bit overpowered, because they just seem so indestructible. And that can sometimes remove some of the tension from a film or from any sort of media that you're engaging with, is if the kind of the big bad or even the protagonist is too overpowered, that, you know, it removes the tension because there's nothing that can be done. And what it actually does really beautifully is it introduces Neo, and to a certain extent Morpheus and Trinity, who are just so kind of scrappy and up against these guys. But you get this line about, like, nobody's ever won. And so there is so much peril for especially Morpheus when he gets captured. But then they introduce this idea of Neo, who can, he's sort of the one big hope to sort of stand up against these really kind of terrifying antagonists. And I find Smith specifically really scary.
I mean, I love that. And I agree. I find him really scary. Scary in a way that there's a quality that Hugo Weaving imbues the character with that I genuinely find terrifying in people as well, in the real life Matrix, which is like this determination to stick to rules, even if the rules don't benefit you or anyone else.
He's a zealot, right?
Yeah. He's like, especially in that scene you were describing with Morpheus, he's like a petty librarian.
Yeah.
Like, he is just waiting to, like, be able to exercise his power over you. Like, oh, I'm going to give you a fine. Oh, I'm going to give you, like, a bad sticker in your record or whatever. Like, whatever. In his case, the pettiness is, you know, murder. But it's still, like, the petty energy is there. And that moment where he takes off his earpiece and he's like, I am gonna shut down the library just so I can give you a telling off so nobody can witness it. But he's still abiding by the rules the system imposes on it. So there's that. But at the same time is the fact that he's one of many.
Yes. Yeah, they've got that kind of legion thing, right?
They're just clones. They don't matter. And there's so many of them. They're just gonna, you know, again, this is kind of gets pushed to an extreme in the second one when there literally is just, like, you know, these mountains of Agent Smiths just piling on top of Neo to make, like, this enormous just, like, human pile, or, you know, I guess agent pile. But there's this other thing I find really creepy, is that the Matrix gives a body to a computer virus, because everything in the world of the Matrix is code, right? Mm-hmm. So Agent Smith and the agents are code made physical. They're nasty. They're viruses. They're there to destroy you, but they're still abiding by that rule. So it's like the worst of both worlds. There's zealots and sadists, but at the same time, there's zealots and sadists abiding to the code that the machines have written them in.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Hate
that
him.
Is scary.
Hate him, but love the performance.
Oh my God, he's absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, he's so good.
There's also just like it's like a middle manager style of speaking.
Big time.
It's like Office Space. He reminds me of the middle manager in Office Space, but, you know, he knows Kung Fu as well. So it's like double scary.
Well, and also it's really interesting you say that, because right at the beginning, when Thomas Anderson goes to get his telling off from his boss, there is something so agent about his boss and the way that he's speaking to him. He sort of says something like, you think you're special, that the rules don't apply to you. And that's literally kind of, and even the way he's like, physically coded, his hair's kind of, sort of slicked back, and he's obviously got the suit on. There is definitely, I think they're like overtly drawing links between middle management and the agents.
Oh my god, they're the middle managers of the Matrix.
Ugh. The worst.
Unsubscribe from that newsletter.
Just to go back to Morpheus for a moment, this, I think, was the first film that I saw Lawrence Fishburne in after I'd seen him playing Ike Turner in the Tina Turner story, What's Love Got to Do with It?
Underrated biopic.
Hard rotation in my house. I absolutely love that film.
Love it.
And Lawrence Fishburne is hideous in it because he's playing a real life hideous man, and he plays Ike Turner so well. And there is so much violence and sexual violence that comes off of that man. He is just he's just a disgusting human being, and it is played so well. And to the point that I almost found Lawrence Fishburne unwatchable in anything else after he played Ike Turner, because he was so good in it. And The Matrix was the first film that made me fall back in love with Lawrence Fishburne, because I was like, okay, fine, I forgive you, because Morpheus is so lovely.
Hard agree on What's Love Got to Do with It. I had the opposite experience where I remember him. I think The Matrix is probably the first thing I saw him in, and then possibly Event Horizon. But then I saw him in What's Love Got to Do with It, and I was like, oh god, Morpheus is mean.
Yeah,
Morpheus is so mean. What is he doing?
Stop spoiling Morpheus for me.
No, don't do that to Angela Bassett. We love her. Yeah, I think he is so phenomenal. And I do see kind of the criticisms about kind of the quote-unquote magical Negro trope that the film uses, especially considering that the Oracle is played by a black woman.
Yeah.
And Morpheus is like this guide into the real world as opposed to the underworld. But god damn it, when you deliver those monologues with such gravitas and such tension as well.
Yeah. And he, I completely agree. I empathize hugely with those arguments. I think there's base in them. But he does have more of his own agenda and kind of agency than some of the sort of more passive kind of magical Negro tropes in other movies. And even just thinking about that training montage, again, obviously he is kind of imbuing, I guess, Neo like with this, this knowledge and this power that Neo then takes and goes on, so I understand it all, but Morpheus is just such a like kick-ass character in his own right. Those moments where he's like, I love the line so much. It might be my favorite Morpheus moment when he says to Neo, do you think that's air you're breathing? And then he just sort of gives like a little tilt of his head and just sort of goes, like those moments.
Cute.
So good. Like he's so like solid and sure of himself, Well,
I think what's interesting is that he's kind of a benevolent opposite to Agent Smith, where like Morpheus is also a true believer.
Yes.
He's also a zealot, except that he believes in the right thing.
The truth.
He believes in the truth. He is, by comparison, and we get a bit more of this in the second and the third films, people love him and trust him and are impressed by him, and he has this natural leadership element to him. people will follow him, but he's kind of perceived as a kook. Like, this whole theory of the Chosen One is his pet project, but not that many others believe in it. So I think it takes the faith of a true believer to kind of stick by his conviction and his theory of what the truth is and what will save them. And people follow him knowing that they might be led to their deaths.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And they have to be okay with that. But before we wrap up, Becky, is there anything about The Matrix that we haven't discussed that you wanted to make sure to cover?
Ooh. Oh my God. I mean, just another quick shout out to the soundtrack. You know, we, propeller heads.
Noises.
I know, I'm sorry. There are some points where I just stop being able to talk and I just sort of have to huff into a microphone because I'm so blown away. But we're talking like propeller heads. I've already mentioned Rob Zombie, Prodigy, Deftones, Rammstein, the Rage Against, like Wake Up as that final moment of the film where Neo flies up into the air just as Wake Up by Rage Against the Machine like slams into your eardrums is so iconic. And like my hairs are standing up on my arms even as I'm thinking about it. I think it is one of the most evocative uses of music in cinema. I think it is genuinely brilliant. So just one sort of extra shout out for the soundtrack, which I think I'm going to see 9 Inch Nails tonight at the O2, and I think I'm going to put, even though they're not actually on the soundtrack, but it's very much a similar vibe. I'm going to put the Matrix soundtrack in my headphones on the way down. What else? Oh, also the fact that de jour, the girl who's in it for approximately 30 seconds with the white rabbit on her shoulder, is from Home and Away.
What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. She was in Home and Away.
Who is she in Home and Away? Wait, I need to Google this. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! Okay.
Which I love. And I always forget, and then she pops up and I'm like, oh yeah, it's her from Home and Away.
Good for her. I mean, Home and Away ran for 38 seasons. My God.
My God.
Damn.
I wonder how many Neighbours is on at the moment, because Neighbours has spat out some real talent.
I just want to give another shout out to the costume design. I think we started talking about the long coats and the latex and the leather, but I think we need to give a lot of credit for the look. It seems like it possibly would have been uncomfortable to do those sequences and those outfits, but my God, do they look good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is also like, it is such a uniform. You know, these are soldiers. They are going to war. And also that video game element that I was talking about earlier, the fact that they, know that they're in a simulation. So they're like, you know what? I'm going to look the way that I'm going to design the sim that I'm going to be in this world. And it's going to look fucking cool. It's going to have a very long leather coat. It's going to have some great sunglasses. Mm-hmm. And my hair is going to be perfectly gelled.
At all times.
All times. It won't move an inch while I do some fighting and some roundhouse kicking.
Oh my God. It's so good. And so iconic. I think a lot of people went out and bought long black coats following this. I mean, just like you say, the sunglasses. I still, if I ever sort of have a pair of sunglasses that are just black, they haven't got any sort of coloured rims or anything like that. I just immediately feel like I'm about to, go and do some kung fu. It's so, all these years on, it was really just sort of such a moment.
I have a pair of sunglasses that are all black, no color in the rim, and they're kind of shaped as hexagons. And every single time I put them on, I immediately think I'm Neo.
Yeah, I know.
Immediately.
And it's powerful, isn't it? It's a powerful feeling.
Yeah. If only there was a couple of instances where I could wear my long black coat on my sunglasses because it was very sunny, but it was also very cold. Best days of my life.
I love that.
Love it. It's the one thing. Whenever I find my long floor-length leather duster, those sunnies are coming out. I don't care what temperature it is.
Yeah. God, yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, you have to protect your eyes. Like, it's not just because it's sunny.
No, it's just because of the Matrix.
Yeah.
It's just because of the Matrix. Like, I'm blind as a bat, so they are a prescription, but it's mainly because of the Matrix.
I love this.
Becky, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Tell people where they can find more of your work online.
You can find me, so my socials, I'm at Bunny Darke. So that's BUNNYDARKE. I'm on Patreon. I do lots of kind of exclusive writing and a bit of podcasting over on my Patreon. So that is patreon.com/Bunny Darke, same as my socials. And otherwise you can find me hugging an ATM.
Basic, thank you so much.